getting ready for a pep rally. There is a ball game coming up on Saturday, right?
Did you hear that?
Who do we play? I think we all know. We're on Lombardi time. Do you know what that is? Come on, Coach, tell me. 10 minutes early? You called the program to start right on the hour? And it starts 10 minutes early. Are we a minute early yet? Come on, tell me. Perfect? Okay. Good evening. My name is Patrick Sheets. I'm the former president of the MSU Retirees Association, and the Retirees Association of MSU is the co-host of tonight's program. It is our pleasure to act in that role. We have with us some very special guests, and you really want to talk and hear from them. So we're going to turn over the mic to them. If we may, let's hear from the Archives, who is the other co-sponsor of tonight's program.
As I was walking up to the Archives from the parking lot, I saw a line outside the building. I have never seen that. I dropped everything and took a picture. Thank you all so much for coming. We really appreciate this. This is a wonderful event. It's not our event. We're just so happy to be part of it. So thank you all very much. I'm just going to do a little teeny plug, very short, for the Archives to kind of put into context what we do here, what we have the privilege of doing here for Michigan State University, and how we hope that your generations, the next generation, the generation after that will all be able to appreciate the great history of this fine institution. So real quick here, we have, well, first I want to thank a few of my staff for all the effort they put into this, especially Portia Vecchio, Assistant Director. She's really instrumental in putting this together. She was the one who said yes. And then I also have almost all of the archivists are in the back right now standing with name tags on like this, and we couldn't have done it without them. So thank you all for this. Okay, here's a few fun facts about the University Archives. Not until this year did we have the whole side of the building of Conrad Hall. The institution really values its history and has put resources behind that. And it's been it's been from alumni, retirees like you all, as well as the institution itself supporting us. We now have the whole side of the other side of Conrad Hall, where you probably, I hope many of you had a chance to look at the exhibits there. We have over 17,000 cubic feet of material, and we were mandated unanimously by the Board of Trustees in 1969. Isn't that interesting that we did not have an archive until 1969? But we started with 275 cubic feet of material because the institution already knew how important it was to be a pioneer land-grant institution and the importance and value of its history. So we didn't start behind it all in terms of collecting. We knew what to keep. So now we have over 17,000 cubic feet, and adding that additional space next door, both on the first floor and in the basement, we have all high-density, state-of-the-art storage with humidity control, which you can't really tell today, but usually is very good. And we added we had 2,600 cubic feet of storage, which is wonderful. Now, we also have a lot of films, which is how we got to know Maya Washington, and that's a story for just a few minutes. We have 3,000 films and 6,000 videotapes. There are more around campus. Things usually kind of trickle into the archives as folks retire, are ready to clean out their desks, have some storage space that they want to empty out. And then we're here waiting to take it on. And we try very hard now in the 21st century to also collect the history, the current documentation of the university. So we're looking at the digital files. Our University relations, communication and brand strategy now takes all digital images. All the photographs being taken here are digital images, so we can't keep the negatives any longer and the photos in paper format. We have to think about storing them in terms of terabytes of history. And so we have now built a digital preservation environment so that next generation, my children who are here, and their children will be able to see the history of this institution. So in 2013, we archived a terabyte of digital content, and it's just going to keep growing. We also do web archiving, and Ed Bush is going to raise his hand in the back. He started in 2010 our web archiving program, and we now have 34 million documents from over 682 active sites. So this is all the history of the archives for the future that used to be printed out, bound. Do you remember when you got your course schedules in the bookstore when you went to buy your books? Remember that? Now it's all online and generated from databases. So we're working on that. Yet at the same time, we still get 500 cubic feet of paper records a year. So we're in this kind of hybrid state, and we're doing both, making sure that we've got the history for the future. And also, and one of the things that I think is the most fun about our job is that we are now digitizing all of this historical content and making it available on the web. So if anyone likes to browse online, please go to Facebook and like us. We have frequent updates. We have over 3,000 images on Flickr. A lot of views there, very popular. We have a blog, which is hopefully a lot of you found out about this event on our blog. And we also started tweeting, and we're trying to do tweets a couple times a week of interesting MSU facts and history. And since we started putting things online, there was fear in our profession that people won't come to the archives anymore because they won't be interested because we'll have it all online. Instead, what I knew would happen, everyone wanted to learn more, and our research has really doubled over the years. And that's a nice, I think, segue into how Maya approached us about some film that she knew was here and how we could make that available to her so that she could do her wonderful work that we're going to talk about afterwards. And finally, I just wanted to end with that the mission of the University Archives is to serve folks like all of you in this community and the topics that we're going to be talking about tonight, and making sure that our younger generations also know about this. So we are really pleased to have you all here today. Thank you very much.
Are you ready for some football? Yeah. So am I. Tonight we have as our moderator, is it famous or infamous? Infamous? The infamous Jack Ebling.
So it's a thrill to be introduced by Patrick Sheets, Patrick Sheets, that is right. Be sure we get that right. We're going to be at the archives, we have to be sure we have these things right. We're going to have a great program tonight. You're going to be seeing the trailer and another clip for Through the Banks on the Red Cedar. You're going to be hearing from the creator, Maya Washington, and of course, her father, Gene, Clinton Jones, so many of their teammates. Can't name them all right now, but we're going to have them come up. They're going to be part of this panel discussion a little bit later and the Q&A. All of you will have a chance to ask them some questions. A couple of quick stories for you. You might wonder why I am here. I did not play on the 1966 Michigan State football team. I would love to have done that, but at the time I was in ninth grade in the spring of 1966, and Lowell Valley Junior High School had a field trip to the state capitol. We spent the morning downtown, kind of boring, and then in the afternoon we were supposed to come here and go to the planetarium. I thought, this was such a beautiful day, and I was here on this campus, and I looked around. I said, there's a better place to be than the planetarium. And if any of you work for the planetarium, I apologize. It's one of my favorites. But I somehow weaved my way over to the Union Building. And as I walked in, one of the first things I heard was the sound of pool balls colliding. And I said, well, this sounds promising. So as I moved down and I came around the corner, and I'm a kid about this high, I walked and I hit this guy. I just bumped right into him. And my head hit him just about the navel. And I looked up, and then I looked up, and I looked up, and then I saw this big smile. And he said, my name is Bubba. And I said, you know, this is a pretty good place. And then later that fall, of course, November 19, 1966, the famous 10-10 tie. And I have to tell you, I watched that football game with one of my best friends. Big mistake. He was a big Notre Dame fan, and we got into a fight when it was over, and we didn't talk for about 6 weeks. But it was that day, November 19, 1966, was the last time that two top 10 ranked teams played in Spartan Stadium. Does anybody know what's going to happen Saturday night? There you go. And we're going to reminisce a little bit. Maya, are you back there? I see you in the back. Okay, oh, you're over here. Okay, great, great. Are we going to show the trailer now? Let's do that. Give you a chance to, Maya, you make a couple comments and set this up, and you're going to see the trailer to a great new film that you're going to take a ton of pride in, the Spartans.
Thank you all so much for being here. Just even getting this far has been a long time coming, and so I want to make sure that everybody's clear on what you're going to experience tonight. We are still finishing the film. We're still editing. So what is about to happen is you are the first audience in America. This is real stuff. You are the first audience in America to actually see our trailer. This trailer was put together with the help of Motion. A wonderful alum named Craig Murray owns a trailer production company. So a lot of the big Hollywood trailers that you see out before you see movies, this is one of those companies who's helped us with that. So Spartan Love is all over this. So what you're actually going to see is the trailer. We may make some tweaks to it before we actually release it online. So I do have to request that anytime we're playing clips, that cell phones, recording devices, all of those things are put away, because we definitely don't want this to get to the internet before we are ready to bring it there. Fair? Okay, but once we get past the clips, take all the pictures you want, hashtag Red Cedar tonight. A lot of hashtaggers in the Retirees Association. Yeah. We'll take the pictures and then give them to your children and grandchildren and tell them to hashtag Red Cedar, okay? So without further ado, we're going to share our film trailer.
They say that the trick of a good communicator is always to leave people wanting more. I think Maya is off to a great start, because everyone who was watching that, I was turning around and catching some peaks, and I think a lot of disappointed people when it ended. But that means you've got a lot to look forward to. Maya, if you want to come up here, and maybe we'll just take a couple of seats if you'd like, and we can do that.
And I have this to swap out for you.
Okay. I think it's pretty clear that this is going to be a wonderful historical record, but more than that, it's kind of a love story with a father and a daughter, right?
Yeah, I am embarrassed to say that until 2011, when I started on this journey, I wasn't much of a football fan. You know, my parents, that scene that you see where I'm my mom is saying, we didn't want to drum football into you, there was a story that came out of that conversation where my mom and my oldest sister swear that at some point in the 80s or 90s, me and my middle sister were asleep during a game, that they had dressed us in green and white and we just were checked out somehow. And I'm like, but didn't you wake us up? And they said, no, I mean, how could you even fall asleep? I said, people, kids fall asleep in church, but you shake them. So why don't you shake me and tell me how important Michigan State was to my life? And so this journey that started when Bubba Smith passed away, and my dad and his teammates, and you see them here, raise your hand if you are a part of the 60s era of MSU football, because we have a lot of really important. History in this room. And so growing up, these were always just my parents' friends, I didn't necessarily know how famous they all were, it was just, they're my parents' friends, and they get together in green and white, but it was at Bubba's memorial service where I saw my dad as well as his teammates in a new light. I saw how much they mean to one another, what their friendships are about, and it reminded me of my college years and the people that I went to school with, thinking about what people might say about me, 50 years into the future and telling old stories. And so I was so moved, not only by those interactions, but finding out for the first time that it was Bubba Smith and his father who actually recommended my dad to the Michigan State coaching staff. And so without that recommendation, my dad never would have made it to Michigan State. So initially it wasn't football that brought us together, but it was the awareness for the first time in my life of how football actually impacted my life. And so I've taken a newfound interest. I'm a Spartan all the way. I went to USC undergrad. Go Green! See? And so I went to USC undergrad, but I was spending time in the theater department and the film department, just wasn't going to football games. So in the past 3 years, I've been to more football games than I've ever been to in my life, and Spartan football is on fire. So it made for a really fun time and a chance for my dad and I to, I think, get closer in a way that we wouldn't have had I not taken this on.
I'm really glad that you had the mention of Bubba there, because not only was he a great pass rusher, not only was he an actor, not only did he crush beer cans in commercials, but he was also a great recruiter, right, Henry? He was able to convince Duffy, hey, you gotta take Gene. Take Gene. And without that, who knows what would have happened. So this is all interwoven, and as Mark D'Antonio loves to say, the bridge has been built from the mid-60s, and there were some periods where Michigan State had it going and then not, had it going and then not, but now with 8 straight bowl trips, Michigan State has a chance to be the first school in Big Ten history to win 5 straight bowl games. Michigan State has a chance for its coach to be the first in Big Ten history to have 11 or more wins 5 times in 6 years. So it all comes back to that, and I'm sure you're learning all of this stuff as you go.
Absolutely. I think what was really exciting, and I have to give a shout out to Kaj Reynolds and his mom Delilah. They're among the amazing Spartan family, like what is happening in MSU football now that I've met along the way. When I set out to make the film, I thought, I'm going to make this film about these old guys and stuff that happened in the 50s. 50 years ago. 50 years ago, I just spoke in the 60s. But what happened, serendipitously along the way, and it's taken a long time from 2011 to we're in 2015 that I've been on this path, but I came to understand it was because that team needed to go to the Rose Bowl, and I needed to be patient until all these amazing things unfolded. So it was really remarkable to get to know a few of the members of that 2013-2014 Rose Bowl team and see the extent to which they do appreciate and they are aware of the sacrifices that you all made in the 60s to make it so that Michigan State is a place where regardless of your color and your background, you have a chance to compete, which is I think the most important legacy that's been left by the gentleman who came before them.
Absolutely. You mentioned Makaja Reynolds.
Yes.
And I want to say that he was one of the most selfless players Michigan State has ever had, because he moved from offense to defense to offense to defense. Didn't know which room to go into sometimes, right, Kaja? And it's a little bit like what's happened with some other guys. Jeremy Langford switched positions twice. Finally, he winds up now with the Chicago Bears. Tony Lippett. He was a scout team quarterback his first couple years here, and then he winds up playing defense and offense, and then he's Big Ten Receiver of the Year, and now here he is in the NFL. And it's a little bit like the guys in the 60s, because when you look at the statistics, Maya, and you see someone like Clinton Jones, if Clinton Jones carried the ball as much as Lorenzo Wade, where's Lorenzo? He's outside. Okay. He's probably still tired from carrying the ball 56 times against Indiana. I can only imagine what Clinton Jones' statistics would have been like, and that's why it's so great that he has been inducted into the Hall of Fame, and that this whole group is going to be immortal. And it's why it's so great that you have taken on this project, but can't do it alone, you know that. It takes help, it takes financial help, and it takes all the help from the people here at the archives.
Well, absolutely. I think aside from the obvious, the financial aspect has been an immense challenge because we're completely independent. We're not funded by the university. We are 110% funded by grant programs, individual donations. I know a number of you in this room have made donations, so thank you. Because even what you just saw was so hard won. So even to be able to give that to you is because of others who've made a difference. So we have a ways to go. It's a scary number. We have about $100,000 to raise. But 2 years ago, I had a lot more than that. So I kind of look at it as, we're building a house and we're just going room by room. So we got the frame in, we're just kind of putting in the fixtures now and getting to the end. Something kind of cool and exciting happened tonight. Hungry Howie's, and I brought this up because I don't want to forget, is offering a free medium specialty pizza to anyone who makes a donation of any size to our project tonight. And so if you already made a donation earlier and you would like to get your coupon, make sure that you get a coupon. But we'll also have folks outside if you're moved to give. We are a fiscally sponsored project of Fractured Atlas. It's a nonprofit, so donations are tax deductible. So that's kind of, exciting. And if donations aren't something people are able to do, liking us on Facebook, or if you're not a Facebook user, but there are a lot of retirees who are Facebook users, because I saw you promoting this tent and sharing things. But if that's not your cup of tea, tell your grandkids, tell your kids, kind of let this Spartan legacy live online, because likes on Facebook and social media activity help us convince distributors later down the line when we're done, or even while we're still funding this project. It helps us build a case that there's an audience for this. So we already have about, I think, 3,000 followers on Facebook. Very small Twitter following, we could work on that. But events like these, demonstrating that people actually want to see this film made, help us get to the finish line.
Maya, I was going to tell you, I've had great success with the radio and television shows we're doing now, using MSU students, not using them, giving them an opportunity to serve as interns, and some of them have then gone on and gotten full-time jobs as a result. And I'm going to send a couple of them your way to do some social networking for you.
Great, thank you.
Maybe that will help with that.
Thank
And when she says she has $100,000 to raise, don't look at it as that number. Just think of it, she's leading after 3/4. Okay? Way good. And had I known about the free pizza, I would have brought some of my media colleagues along, who are always out there for But I wanted to ask you about, through this whole project, what's been the biggest surprise for you?
Well, I think I was initially very surprised the extent to which the current team knows the history. I got a chance to go behind the scenes at Scandalaria Center, kind of where most of the football players spend a lot of their time, but also where they send recruits. And I was amazed to see these images of the bygone era that are still kind of a part of Antonio's messaging, that are a part of how this team is thinking about the past. So I think that was really surprising. I think also in interviewing some of the teammates, I was really shocked to find out, you know, for my generation, I'm thinking things were so bad in the 60s, you know, tell me about all the bad things that happened to you. And what's different about my dad's generation from mine, I can probably tell you, every time someone has called me a racially inappropriate name, every time I've been slighted as a woman, I could probably go down a list and name names. But what was so amazing is how classy my dad and his teammates are about handling those issues in those times, because they really faced ugly behavior. And that was from our federal government, you know, especially if you're in the South. So I think what's so amazing to hear is, as bad as things were for them in the South, the extent to which they have appreciation and gratitude for what Michigan State offered, even though things weren't necessarily perfect here in Lansing. Lansing in a lot of ways was still very segregated at that time. And so I think for me, I learned a lot about myself, how I perceive race relations today, and probably how a lot of my peers of color or anyone who feels like they're on the fringe, marginalized in some way. But I think I was just profoundly impressed with all the teammates when they talked about what it was like during that time, when I asked, well, did everybody just get along? The white guys just automatically got along with the black guys? And for the most part, they did. They came together to do what needed to be done. And where there might have been, you know, unexpected personalities, that had more to do with personalities than it did race. So I think that was really, really surprising.
You've been Spartanized.
I have been Spartanized. I got green nail polish. It's not quite Spartan green, but those are my fingers on that ball on our Facebook page.
You know, Maya, I can tell you, I had a chance to do a book on the Detroit Tigers and their history back in 2006. And frankly, I was amazed and appalled how few of the Tigers knew about the people who had made their careers possible. And there were a lot of players, believe it or not, couldn't identify Jackie Robinson in terms of the struggle. They had no idea who Larry Doby was. And here, those are the people who had paved the way for them. I'm always impressed, and this effort is only going to contribute to that. When you talk to the current Michigan State players, they can identify the past as they walk down those hallways in the Scandalaria Center and the Duffy Doherty building, and they see the jerseys and the posters, and they stop and they look at it. They're bombarded with that stuff. And I think that all brings everything together into the family aspect that Mark Antonio preaches. So we're very happy that the progress being made is such as it is, and you want to let people know a little bit more. They can contact you if they want to make this dream a reality.
Absolutely. Well, the best place to go is our website to get updates on where we are. The film is called Through the Banks of the Red Cedar, so we all know the banks of the Red Cedar. We just added through because it's through that legacy. I'm here. You know, a lot of us wouldn't be here in terms of where we've been able to take our lives without the banks of the Red Cedar being Michigan State. We're going to show another clip. The reason that it was really special and important to collaborate with the Retirees Association as well as archives is mainly many of you were here in the 60s. Raise your hand if you were here, a student in the 1960s. Wow. Yes. And I reached out to Portia here at the archives because we need footage. So when you see us talking about things that happened in the 60s, it's hard to just not have images and not have footage and things like that. And so what may blow your mind is they have a number of materials. So Cynthia kind of went through a list of what they have and the things that they do. But you never know. Some of you who were here in the 60s, maybe you were a part of a certain club, or maybe you were an athlete and not necessarily a football athlete, but maybe you ran track or you were on another team. They have, when she talked about cubic feet of footage, do you remember back in the day when you actually made movies like with the projector and it was long film? So they have a lot of long films, but when people like me call to say, hey, do you have anything from track in the 60s? They may or may not have that because it's on a long foot of tape as opposed to it being a DVD or a link that someone can watch. So what I was surprised to find out is they don't have the funding to just do simple digitization. So they were able to help us for $600, which is a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of things, they were able to digitize some track footage for us. So there were cans of footage that have just been sitting, in a preserved space for 50 years that haven't seen the light of day. So it's important that whatever you can do to inspire the powers that be, or those in your community, if there's something you want to see and research, there is a plethora of things here that may just need to be digitized, or things that they're not aware are there. So we were able to get some footage, and in exchange for us doing that, we're able to put that in our film. And so for me, as my dad's daughter, I'm seeing, material of my dad as an 18-year-old, that I never would have seen, that I've never seen, that he's probably never seen. And so there's a lot here at the archives that, has really made a difference for us. The last clip that we're going to share tonight from the film, you're going to see a lot of bang-em-up football footage from the present, and it has a big old watermark that says T3 Media on it, okay? So anytime I want to use footage of things that happened in the 60s or things from the present, I have to go to the Big Ten, and they have a big licensing agency, and those are the people who broker how much it costs for me to use that material. And so to tell a football movie, I'm going to need a lot of that material. So having the support of the archives here, where they are able to, based on your budget and based on kind of what your purposes are, to have them be a partner in that way made a huge difference. Because the little bit of footage that they were able to present us gets us that much further. I don't know how, say all the Hail Marys and Hallelujahs, and I know it's Rosh Hashanah's coming up. So just hold us in all the prayers that we can get to the finish line, but also find a way to work with the Big Ten to get some of the footage that we need to finish.
It gets to be expensive when you think about all of the resources that the archives have to deal with. And once in a while you get lucky and you get a big donor. Michigan State got one this afternoon. Draymond Green, I don't know if you heard, has just pledged $3.1 million. Michigan State. That is for scholarships and additions to Breslin Center. And it's possible someone here may want to have the Ernie Pastor collection. Don't know. How many of you have had an interaction at some point in your life with the great late Dr. John Hanna? A lot, right? The greatest administrator in the history of American universities. I think that's pretty well acknowledged in a lot of areas. You think he would like what you just saw? Think Baby Munn would like what you just saw? Duffy Doherty? Yeah. Your you're on the right track to do some wonderful things. We want to give you two gentlemen a chance to talk about why it was so important to make this film. And Gene, obviously, you did a great job of child raising, but he never dropped a pass the whole time.
Too many hits.
How does it feel to know that your daughter has taken on this project and she's going to mark for immortality this special group of individuals who gave Michigan State this incredible success and recognition long after you were gone?
Well, I would first say that, can you give me the back?
Yeah.
Okay. I would just like to first say that I'm very, very proud that Maya has taken on this project. Where I came from, and you've heard most of the story from the segregation part, Michigan State means the world to me. And of course, I was blessed to have 3 daughters and no sons. I got 3 granddaughters. and you'll hear from Clinton, he has me beat when he tells his story about how many daughters he has. But I'm so proud that she's taken on this project because I'm really blessed that I had a chance to come here and play football and to also get an education here at Michigan State. I came from a background where segregation was really real and it was really hard for African Americans, especially in the state of Texas. I can talk about Texas because I'm a Texan. And while I'm talking about Texas, but there were other southern states. The situation where you would have separate restrooms, for example. You'd have one for a white female, and you'd have one restroom for a white male, and you'd have the third restroom for colored. Just the third restroom for anybody that's colored. That's your restroom. So that's what we faced every day when I lived in Texas. And so when you go to a movie theater, you had to go upstairs to the theater. And all of the white customers, they would go in the front door. So that's how we lived. We didn't have voting rights. So anytime there was a city election, a state election, federal elections, black people could not vote. And so that's where I came from. So when I came up here as a freshman, for example, and I know Ernie and Pat Stewart were my teammates, I had to take a bus to come to Michigan State. And so coming here as a freshman, you had to be very careful because I was 1,500 miles away in LaPorte, Texas, and that was a long bus ride. So to stop at a restaurant or to use the restroom, you really there was a long drive in between, and at the bus stops, of course, they would have the restroom facilities like I just described. And so I came up here on a bus. But the other part that still stands out that's very important to me, in that segregation, Duffy Doherty would do workshops and clinics for all of the black coaches in the state of Texas. And those black coaches in the state of Texas, they had to have their own coaches association. And the white coaches had their association. So Duffy was a member of Nationwide Coaches Association for all white coaches, if you will. But he personally came down every year when they make the rounds and put on coaching clinics. Bubba's father, Willie Ray Smith, was a football coach in that area. Very, very famous and very well known. And so I was at Baytown Carver High School and Bubba was at Charleston Harlan High School. So I got to know about Michigan State because Bubba really wanted, Duffy really wanted Bubba to come here at Michigan State. Now Bubba, of course, he was 6'8", 300 pounds, and everybody in the country wanted him. But he couldn't go to any school in Texas. So when Bubba finally decided to say, okay, I'm going to Michigan State, he called me and personally said, Gene, I'll put a good word in for you, which he did. And so I was able to get a scholarship, and I later learned that the scholarship that I got was really a track scholarship because Coach Willie Ray Smith and Bubba said, well, Gene is pretty good at running hurdles. So you got to bring him up. So that's how I got there. And then I later learned that the coaching staff, Gibbert, one of our coaches here at Michigan State at the time, they had some track scholarships left. And so they gave me one of those scholarships. Now keep in mind, nobody had ever seen me run track. And nobody had ever seen me play football. So it's only because of Bubba's father and him encouraging Duffy. They saw no film on me. They had no film. We had no film to show. So I came to Michigan State only on their recommendation. And so when I came here as a freshman, I know Ernie doesn't remember this. Anybody that was on our team that freshman year, you couldn't compete as a freshman. So we started running track, and back in those days, as a freshman, you would wear this white shirt, and they give you a number. And so we were competing. Now keep in mind, this is my first time ever running against white athletes. I'd never done that before. And in Texas, because of the segregation, we didn't have that opportunity. So when I started running, and basically I really didn't want to do the spring football, and Duffy told me that if you could make a contribution and all, you miss spring practice and everything. So I was really motivated, and I started winning. And everybody, some of the other guys, and some of the people in the area, because I'm wearing this white shirt, they said, well, hey, where are you from? Well, I said, I'm running from Michigan State. And then they said, where are you from? I'm from Texas. He said, well, how did they find you? and this went out, and Bobsville, and that freshman year, we're running track. I'm going to Canada. I'd never been to Canada. So I'm doing all these things, and they always ask me, said, where are you from? And how did you get to Michigan State? And so this went out for the freshman year, and I'm so glad that I had a chance. Michigan State gave me that chance. And so when Maya wanted to put all this together, and I was sharing these stories with her, and I couldn't do it when she was young. She wouldn't have understood what was happening. But now she gets it. and I'm so glad that she's spending the time, and we're so proud of her showcasing our family. And then here at Michigan State at this time, that still are in the loop, and they're spending some time supporting what we're trying to do.
I think Duffy Doherty gets some sort of an honor for the most creative use of a track scholarship by a football coach, right? And you never lost to an athlete from Michigan or Notre Dame the entire time you're running track, correct?
The only guy I lost to was Clinton.
Absolutely. We talk about great track athletes that, we got a shuttle hurdle relay team in this room that could probably still go out and compete. Clinton, you are not from the Deep South. I think to count Cleveland in the Deep South, you'd have to live in Montreal.
That's correct.
But is that working? Crazy, okay. All right. You want to talk about your path to Michigan State?
I had an unusual path as well. I went to Cedar High School in Cleveland, Ohio. And actually, I was pretty much an unknown football player in Cleveland. I only scored 2 touchdowns at Cathedral Latin. And I didn't play varsity until my senior year. And it's amazing that I continued in football because actually Cathedral Latin as a freshman, on the freshman team, 350 students went out for the freshman team in my school. It was known for its academics, for its football and also for like basketball. So I went out for the team. I played a whopping 5 seconds in the last game of the season, and we were losing 50 to nothing to Benedictine. So the coach said, well, put Jones in there. So that was the end of my football career, and I went out for football my sophomore year. After they had already started, was playing for 2 weeks, and Coach Jack Kelly let me come out for the team. I made the varsity team, and then I played my junior year. I was still a second string player, and then I went out my senior year, scored a couple of touchdowns. I sprained an ankle, and then was out for 4 weeks, came back, broke my hand, and that ended my high school career in football. And I was very, very disappointed, and I made a vow to myself that I was going to make it in football or die trying. So I put all that energy and frustration to my academics and into track. And I wound up going undefeated my senior year in the low and high hurdles because in Cleveland, we had indoor track. They didn't have that in the South. They could run all year round. So my high school didn't have an athletic field. All we had was a building. It was a Catholic high school. We had a basketball court or arena, and then the brothers and the priests lived in the rectory behind the building. So during the winter months, from January till after spring, I run in the hallways from the basement to the third floor, run around the building. The YMCA was behind our building, and then we'd go through a fence, go to the YMCA, and they had an indoor track over there, and we'd run around the ceiling, this track, a suspended track. And in football, we'd run about a mile up the hill, like a main street, like Grand River, but one up the hill, and go to a public park, and that's where we practice. Now you think, how can you develop a program like that? But at one time, probably in the 30s, our high school was second only to Ohio State in attendance in football. And so the other thing that we're known for how many archbishops are going to come out of our school, because originally it was a seminary school. It was on the other side of town from where I lived. I didn't want to go to school with anybody that I went to elementary school with, or to the Catholic school in my area called Benedictine. And they're our rivals, just like Michigan State and University of Michigan. So the fortune to be able to go to that school, and you had to take a test. And I took a test, and I didn't pass it, so I don't know how I got into Cathedral Latin. But somehow I thought somebody made it happen. And my mother pretty much raised me by herself. So I was a latchkey kid. My mother pretty much raised me, and she worked very hard, sometimes 2 or 3 jobs to send me to school. It was an all-boys school, 1,100 boys, about 20 black students in the school. And most of the kids at my school started in the Catholic Youth Authority, so they were well experienced in the fundamentals of basketball and football. I was not. My first year in football, I was 13 years old, and I had a leather helmet that my grandmother got working with some people, and I had a mismatched uniforms. And so I had a very slow development at least in football. But I was always fast, and I had skills in terms of eluding people who were trying to tackle me. So we played in Alexander Hamilton Junior High School, which was a couple of block over from my school. That's where I learned my skills, actually, in running, because you play in the asphalt. You know, if you fall down, you mess up. But my first sport was boxing. And so, and my trainer was Jimmy Reeves. And if you saw the movie Raging Bull, and Jacob Mount, that fighter was my trainer. And that's where he started teaching me things about defending myself. I wanted to be a fighter. And I used to put it all in the past school ribbon, all the fights at that time. So that developed certain skills in terms of combat and whatnot. And I did that from the time I was 9 till I was 13. And so my cousin was a fighter also. He was 2 years older than me. He got knocked out in the second round, and so I went to the Cleveland Arena. My mother grabbed me by the collar, took me out, and said, and ended my boxing career. And I didn't really have any brothers or sisters, just my mother and I. So I had guys in the neighborhood, like big brothers. They used to take me around. We go to the track. We used to run relays around the neighborhood because of the urban area. And so the way I used to hide them is it looked like I run the hurdles. So my kids in my neighborhood, the older guys, 2 or 3 years older, taught me how to run the hurdles. So when I went to Cathedral Latin after the football season, I ran track, and I it was a gift. I had, and I started running track, and so it did good. So my career went on to my senior year, and my junior year we went to the Rose Bowl, which is, the Thanksgiving Bowl game, played in the Cleveland Brown Stadium. That was the equivalent of our Rose Bowl or the Super Bowl. And we lost the Holy Name. But we played in Cleveland Brown Stadium. But somehow it was in my blood to play football, And even though my senior year I was undefeated in track, and I set the national record in the high hurdles. I went to the national track meet, and my school could afford it. I didn't know it at the time, but Tommy Smith and Travis Williams was winning in that meet. Gene should have been in that meet, but they didn't have the income to send him there to Los Angeles. So we had that meet, the high school national track meet, in July 1963 at University of Southern California. It's an interesting connection there to the Trojans. Now, I graduated from high school, and the first opportunity to go to college was from Bob Devaney? Bob Devaney. Now, the first year they came out with a national letter of intent. Once you sign that letter, you have to go to that school. Well, he came and talked to me, and he signed me early. So when I'm running in the state track meet at Ohio State in the Horseshoe, Woody Hayes, who wasn't interested in me at all, my coach, Sam Bogle, tried to get interest in me. He saw me running, and I was 196 pounds and 6 feet. Then he came over and gave me a big hug. And he said, "We're going to welcome you to Ohio State." Well, I had no intention of going to Ohio State. And I really didn't like Ohio. I just wanted to get out of Ohio and get out of Cleveland. So he started pursuing me very aggressively. And so I decided I'm going to go to Detroit, University of Detroit, because Villanova, I couldn't get in there because of the SAT scores. And my coach, Richard Marabito, he took me up there to Detroit, and I looked and I said, well, I'm going to go there. Now, what he did for me, he made that contract void, so I was free to go to any other division of school, because he thought he was going to have me going to Ohio State. So by that time, I graduated from high school, and at my graduation, they tell where you're going to go to school. And so we don't know where Clinton's going to go to school. He's still looking. And so Coach Marabito, Hank and John McVeigh come to my school to look at 2 of my other teammates. They didn't come there to look at me. They looked at that film, and Hank said, well, who's that guy? And so they told him. So Coach Marabito had a connection to John McVeigh and to Hank. And so when I went to University of Detroit, Coach Marabito knew that Detroit was going to eventually stop football. They didn't have a track team, but they brought in Hayes Jones to go into Eastern Michigan to try to convince me to come to the University of Detroit. So I went up and I looked at Michigan State, and I saw the campus and the arboretum and the woods and everything. And I just fell in love with the campus. And Sherman Lewis and Dewey Lincoln were playing, and they're juniors, they're going to be seniors. I said, well, I got a good chance to play anybody else coming in. So I decided I'd go to Michigan State. And I met Duffy that night. Hank took me to Duffy, and I met him that night, but when I finally came to go to registration, I wasn't able to recognize him. And Hank took me on a golf tournament, golfing, and I sliced the ball and hit somebody in the fair lane. So golf wasn't my sport, but I wound up going to school, and Gene and Bub and all the rest of the guys were already there. I knew nobody. And it was really a culture shock for me. So that's how I wound up going to Michigan State. It was because of Hank and John McVeigh and Coach Marabito. But that connection without knowing anything. And so essentially, Gene and myself were going to get the last scholarships that were left, and wound up coming and I had no desire to run track. My mind was totally on football. And so it was Duffy and Gene that made me run track. But then it got bombshell, so it's kind of interesting how things worked out. But one of the things I wanted to get out of Cleveland was a violent place, we had a lot of immigrants from Sicily and Italy, and our neighborhood was very ethnically and culturally diverse. People worked together and socialized together, but at the time, it just the consciousness and the life condition, I didn't like it. I wanted to get away from it. But what it did, it molded my character. And through all that adversity that I went through, it gave me a perspective of humanity in spite of the separation. So when I went to Michigan State, I had my brothers here, and for the first time going to a co-ed institution. Well, since elementary school anyway. And then I'm being with all these brothers and stuff, and we just kind of came together, not knowing about our background, and we didn't talk about it. We didn't talk about the adversity and the things that we went through. But here we are on this freshman team, not only able to play against each other, beating each other up, but we lived in dormitories together, we slept together, we ate together, and we came together on the tutelage of Bert Smith, who was the assistant athletic director, and he took all our energy, and to him, we are jackasses. So we're equal. And so it wasn't about, about the color of your skin, or whether it was the All-American, the All-State, and I wasn't all anything in football. I was the most valuable player on the team. I got an honorary thing. The whole team got because it was so terrible my senior year. So when I got to Michigan State, it was like a fresh start, and so that's where I met my brothers, and from there the rest is kind of history.
So Clinton, you owe Woody Hayes a debt of gratitude for helping you get out of that letter to Nebraska. And then he really hated you when Michigan State won 32-7 over Ohio State in 65 and 11-8 in the monsoon the next year. And he didn't like you very much. He had some words for you, right?
Well, when I told him that I was going to Michigan State, and mind now, I didn't know anything about Michigan State. He said, "Oh, you're going to go there to Michigan State with all those criminals. They got a guy there named George Singh. They had to get him out of prison every week to play the game." I said, "Who's George Singh?" And he actually slammed the phone down on me. He was really pissed off,
Woody Hayes was a nice guy before he met Glenn.
Karma's really tough, He paid for it a couple of years later.
And now, Saturday night, Spartan Stadium, you're going to be honored. The Hall of Fame induction. Your predecessors were there waiting for you. And also back as honorary captain, Le'Veon Bell, who a lot of people said, hey, he must have patterned his style after Clint Jones, and winds up wearing your number now with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Number 26, right?
It all comes around. Before we bring up some of your teammates, I want you both to have a chance, Gene, let's start with you, of why this group was so important. Not just why it was so good. We know what the statistics tell us. We know that Henry's 65 defense was the greatest in NCAA history. But more than the 19-1-1 record those 2 years, you did something for college football, for American society. Do you want to talk about that, Gene?
Yeah, I think the number one, as I think back on that, I'm so proud now as I look back on our, can you hear me in the back? Can you hear it now? So I'm so proud as I look back. For me, education was most important because my family, my parents, we just didn't have a chance to do the education in Texas the way we wanted to with my teachers, my coaches down in Texas. And so all of us who had the chance to come up here, I always mention Ernie Pasteur and Jimmy Ray and Bubba and George Webster. Everybody from an education standpoint, as you look back on that, we got our degrees, and some came back. And one of the things that I'm most proud of, now George Webster, there's a George Webster Scholarship Fund. And that fund is available for students, all students. Now we have, at the time that me and Clint and all of us were playing, they didn't have women's sports at all. So any athlete on this campus, if they want to come back and finish their degree through the George Webster Scholarship Fund, they support that and provide funding. For example, Hank Bullock was very, very instrumental in working with George on that. And so I am so proud that when you think about George's legacy, and that part of his legacy will live on forever and ever, because the sports program here at Michigan State is much larger now than it's ever been in terms of the number of students. And for whatever the reason, now all of these athletes, you know, they get to pick salaries now. And in many cases, they don't need it, but there are a lot of students that play sports, participate in sports, and they need some support to get back into their degree. And so that's something that's out there, and very few colleges and universities, I've learned, don't have a program like that. And so, in short, the most important thing is, as I said earlier, with the education part, and all of the guys who played, my teammates, we were really turning on to really make sure that when we would go back to our little southern situation, if you will, everybody from that situation, they want to make sure that you get your degree. And I can say that most of the guys, 90% of the guys got their degree. And I'm so proud that that tradition, even today, here at Michigan State, Coach D and Tom Izzo and all of these coaches, I mean, they really pushed the academic part. But I'm so proud that we had something to do with that also, not just in winning games. So the education part.
I had a chance, How many of you are familiar with the name Julian Peterson? He was a great linebacker, All-American, MSU's all-time leader in tackles for losses only in 2 years, 5-time Pro Bowl player, and had another chance to talk with him today, and he's coming back. He's going to finish his degree at age 37. Clinton, I want to get your take on why this team wasn't just great, why it was so important.
There's a principle, it's a Buddhist principle actually, it's called dependent origination. You know, you think that when things happen, that they're by accident, but I've come to learn, I've come to learn this since leaving Michigan State. Cathedral Latin prepared me for Michigan State prepared me for life. Then the years that I played professional football, I would call those kind of narcissistic years, because you have money, and you have, notoriety, and you have things like that. But when you're young, full of testosterone, and it's like the big time was not real. But the foundation that I got at Michigan State, after I finished playing football, it prepared me to really pursue, my dream. And so I wound up going into chiropractic. Well, looking back over my life, over those years, I started to really get a deep appreciation for the seemingly coincidences that happened. If it wasn't for this, that wouldn't happen. If it wasn't for that, this couldn't happen. We are all interconnected. The connection I talked about with Hank coming to Michigan State, coming to my high school, and I started connecting the dots. And I started looking at, especially this year, and especially with Gene and Pat Gallinoff, and my teammates actually going on the campaign to get me to the Michigan State Hall of Fame. These connections, as the years pass by, people kind of go their own ways, and you lose your connection. My father told me, he said, when you go to this college, you're going to make friends that are going to be your friends for life. Well, when he said that, I don't really give much thought to it, but I've seen that kind of principle or that truth that he talked about develop over the years. My friends like Pat Gallinoff and Pat and Jerry West and many, Bob Steele, Ernie, Don, our connection as we got older gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And I started wondering about that connection. So I started doing some research about President Hammond and also about Biggie Munn and Duffy Doherty. And I know back in the day, Duffy and Biggie would have their like kind of ego kind of thing and stuff like that. But that synergy of the three of them created this synchronicity. And with Duffy's personality and his courage to break the mold and go out and pioneer, which other coaches weren't doing at the time, I started connecting the dots. And then we had our lean years, for a long time, kind of on and off, but it kind of fell off the charts after Duffy was gone. And then in 2005, first woman president, Luann K. Simon, woman president, and then she hired Mark Hollis, and then D'Antonio. It took like a little while, but all the while, those seeds were already planted to start a new generation for the 21st century. And I started looking at, think about it. In 1965, if you went back 50 years, that was in 1915. World War I, and a couple years before that, Teddy Roosevelt was going to end football because of all the deaths in national football. And he told the presidents of the university, you better do something or I'm going to end football. That's where the NCAA was forged, 1950. Then World War II, the baby boomers, our generation, we were born in 1945. And then you go forward 20 years, 1965. You start connecting the dots. Are these coincidences? What's happening here? Then, after 1965, 20 years later, 1945, 1965, 2015, the three, Simon, Hollis, D'Antonio. He came in with a program. The people started accepting the program. But the unity, different bodies with one mind. I started connecting the dots. You see, it's no coincidence that we're all here right now. And I started realizing that we're all of one family. And Michigan State has had a history of setting precedents, like no other university in the United States. Started with Gideon Spence, 100 years ago, So we're all connected. The labels that we put on this, on that, is just labels. But essentially, as human beings, what we have in Michigan State is this shared humanity. We had it 50 years ago, we have it now, and we're ready. You see, this is our time. Now, where we're going to be 20 years from now, it'll be 2045, go another, 3015. We're setting the seeds. We're changing the whole life condition of not only Michigan, but the university, of the whole society. It takes time. The seeds are already there. They're in a state of potentiality, but when you have the right synergy and the right people, it's just a matter of time before you give birth to what's already there. And this is what's happening right now with us. So those seeds were planted by that generation in the 20th century, and now it's here. We married each other. But we had something going on at that time. We're in the top 10 of every sport. This Stan Washington. Basketball was happening. We were all champions at that time. So we never lost that champion. We always had that forever victorious spirit. We didn't give up the lean years. So now this is the time that we're coming together. It's no accident. We're one family, we're one green, and you know what? Everything, but we're turning green, we already have it. So all we have to do is water it with our determination. But once we make the determination collectively that we will not be defeated, every cell in our body, everything will coalesce around that and make it happen. So, people ask me, what's going to happen Saturday? Ask yourself. I know what's going to happen. I have no doubt about it. So what made us great at that time, the same thing was making us great in the 21st century. We have the same synergy. We all have the shared humanity, and we're all preparing for the next stage. I have the opportunity at this time period to have all 5 of my daughters. I find they was big deal in something. Yes, I got 5 daughters. I got 5 granddaughters and one little swinging ox, one grandson, and he's not interested in football, and I got another granddaughter on the way. So the 21st century must be the century of the spirit, the century of women, and the century of Spartan nature. So that's it.
Still make a great team, don't they? They'll be appearing. No, they won't. I think that you had the number 2 pick in the 1967 NFL draft, the number 8 pick in the 1967 NFL draft, going to the same team, Minnesota. What are the odds of that? And what are the odds that the number 1 pick, Bubba Smith, would go play for Henry in Baltimore? And the number 5 pick, George Webster. If you were an NFL scout, you didn't have to travel very far. Just get a hotel in East Lansing. You were in pretty good shape. Gentlemen, you think we should call some of your teammates up from the mid-60s? I see a few of them out here. Ernie, Don Witherspoon, some of the guys out here. I'm not sure exactly who's here. Jerry West, definitely. Come on up, please.
And Sterling Armstrong. Don't be shy.
I thought I might get a free dance lesson out of it. To have something like this, it takes courage and it takes incredible leadership. Talked a little bit about John Hanna, Biggie Munn, Duffy Daugherty. I have a Duffy Daugherty story. You guys have probably already heard it, but maybe you have not. And Duffy told me this the night after he was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame clinic. We were at the Waldorf Astoria in New York. It was 4 a.m. and he was singing in the lobby. So somebody found a piano. That's all he needed. And we were talking about some of the adversity, some of the things that he faced for this grand experiment. And he told me a story about a party in East Lansing. And a prominent area businessman had had a few drinks and took him aside and said, you know, Duff, had a great season, but you're playing too many of them. And Duffy said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, you know, too many of them. And Duffy said, if you're saying what I think you're saying, this party is over and so is this friendship. That's not an easy thing to do. And there has to be somebody who's willing to do exactly that. Sterling, let's start down at this end, and I want to get your take on Duffy Daugherty, all the people who helped put this thing together. Couldn't have been done without him, obviously.
Well, yeah, first of all, Duffy, he was just truly an amazing coach, an amazing person with great charisma, okay? Everywhere he went, he brought a smile to everybody. And it wasn't accidental, because he was always telling jokes, okay? And just real quick, one little thing, he used to sometimes, while we were practicing and playing football, okay, and practicing, he would sometimes stop the practice and bring everybody together so he could tell a joke. And so sometimes, you know, if the joke wasn't that funny, Bob would say, laugh, everybody, laugh. But he was just truly a great guy. And then, you know, he definitely won me over when he came and visited my little high school in Detroit Central, you know, and so I had to come here, and it's been a great decision. And the biggest thing was Duffy and his charisma. And he may not have been the great coach, but he had a lot of great coaching staff. Okay, so it was just a great team effort, and that's why I'm going to get started off talking about my man Duffy.
Done.
Well, I gotta talk about the protective nature we had for Clinton and Gene and the rest of the offense. But the one guy on the end down there, I didn't like him. Jerry West.
Oh, I think it's about Jerry.
That son of a gun used to block so damn hard, and he'd hit me in places that I didn't want to be hit. So, he was a great guard, but damn, he made you work. But one of the things that Clinton said earlier about family, I'm going to tell you a story that, from my perspective, involves Clinton and when we were playing Penn State, at Penn State. And it involved something that I thought was very telltale in terms of the team and the unity and the camaraderie we had for each other. It was so important because some of the guys who did not travel to that mountain borrowed a car, as I understand it, and drove out to Penn State just to be with the rest of the fellows, which is great. Anyway, Clinton had made a great play toward an end zone, and the Penn State guys looked like they're going to start to rough him up. So, being protective as the defense was, we said, oh no, this ain't going to happen today. So we were running over toward that corner of the stadium to start the fight. So here we go, has this whistle, and I wish you could do that, but make everybody freeze. I mean, there are two things you did when we played football here. One, you answered the name of jackass. Two, you froze when Hank would go, hey, and everybody would freeze. So we're in mid-stride when he gives that whistle. We said, wait a minute. They're about ready to fight Clinton. I mean, beat up Clinton because he made a great play. He said, I told you, don't fight. I said, damn, coach. What you want to do? Beat everybody and not fight when you're supposed to. He said, I said, don't fight at an away game. So, as Clinton said at that game, he said, now we're a family. And that notion of family began in my mind when we came together and we started to think about what it meant to be able to look out for one another. And I think it cemented in our minds it was a lifelong relationship. Not only for each of us, but our coaches and people who were associated with us. And to me, that will last till we take our last breath. Several of our comrades have already gone on, but we still remember them. And when we get together, of course, the lives get bigger. And everybody's passing and everything, and I did not know that Clinton was so promissory. I know we were talking about Gene, and Gene is so lucky to have a daughter like mine, but I gotta tell you, when we would go and hope that the offense would do its job, and Steve would throw the ball up, they said, well, we'll get caught, and we'd go into Gene's area, because there's a picture on one of the posters out there with Gene doing this. That's what you always look for, that hand going up. And, and it did. That was my friend.
My story. I came in 1963 with all of these guys from Beaufort, North Carolina. All the segregation and all the things that Gene talked about, that's what we were growing up under. When I came to Michigan State, before I came to Michigan State, I was being recruited to all the black colleges in the South. He was a white coach from the neighboring town that saw my talents. So I went to meet with him. He said he would write letters to the Big Ten. So he did. I got a call from Duffy, I got a call from Mary Warren from Minnesota. I got a call from folks in Indiana, Purdue, all these in Wisconsin. all these folks recruited me. I took my first visit was at Michigan State University. It was in the fall. Beautiful campus, beautiful people here. Sherm Lewis and another guy by the name of Leroy Bobbitt took me around. And Friday night I went to a basketball game. I saw people like Sherman Lewis, Stan Washington was playing, Marcus Saunders was playing that night. Love place, love it. After the game, I went to a Q-Sci-Fi party over at the Legion. Okay, party down. So all the black folks over there having a good time, socializing, just having a great time. After that party, came back, Hank Bullen, talked to him, and I talked to a few other people. Michigan State was a place for me. The following week, I went to the University of Minnesota. The following 2 weeks, I went to Minnesota. That's where I met George Webster. At the time, it was in January. It was cold. We had about 10 inches of snow. George looked at me. I looked at him. Two Southern boys freezing in the Minnesota cold. Bobby Bill, Carlisle at the time, they were North Carolina guys. They were our sponsors. They took us around, and they knew for sure that they had us locked in because they knew that we were Carolina guys and they were Carolina guys. And Minnesota, marijuana, were recruiting black athletes at the time. What they didn't know was that Duffy came to my house, came to the school first, talked to my coach, talked to my principal, and said that they really wanted Ernie Pastor at Michigan State. 2 hours later, Duffy shows up at my home. The first white person that ever stepped in my home to talk to my parents as regular citizens of the United States of North Carolina. Usually first if the white people come to my house were folks that collected insurance and things like that. People from the South knew this. Duffy came in, my mother, welcome me,
Can't hear you. She cooked this typical Southern meal. Duffy ate everything. Everything. That shows respect. People from the South know this. If you finish your plate, then that shows respect for the cook. Not only did Duffy finish his plate, but he has seconds. My mother loved Duffy. Nothing else that I could do, any other trips that I made, she didn't hear anything. Duffy talked about education. He talked about the support system that I would have when I came here. We had a guy by the name of Bert Smith. I had never been so many jackasses in my life. But it was a term of endearment with him because if he called you a jackass, you knew that he cared about you. Okay? And he did. He cared about every one of us. I think it was at our 40th reunion, Bubba gave him the most highest respect that I have ever seen. He said, if it wasn't for Bert Smith, none of us would be here, okay? And you guys know what I'm talking about. Bert Smith stayed on our bus and made sure that we were in class, made sure we passed those classes, and now, after 50 years, I have 3 degrees from Michigan State University. I'm very, very proud of that. I not only that, but I was a high school principal, high school coach. I was a director of a juvenile treatment facility for juvenile adjudicated young men. Was the best job I ever had because I was one of them. And it takes one to work with one. The 5 years I worked at Maxie Boys Training School was just a joy. George came down there to speak to the kids. Phil Hoy came down there to speak to the kids. Bubba came down there twice to speak to the kids. And so you talk about this friendship.
It's a friendship that we've made and we've had for 50 years. And not only friendship, it's a respect for one another. Now you talk about Jerry West. Back when we were living in Wonders Hall, and the girls just called Wonder Boys, Pat West knows about this, because she was one of the girls over there. Jerry, you know, and we didn't have a lot of money, we didn't have transportation, but on the weekend, if anybody needed a haircut or anything, we had to go to Lansing to get our haircuts. Jerry would take us, the guys, over to get our haircut. He had a motorcycle. Jerry had a motorcycle. Okay? And he would take us over to get our haircut. One time, Jerry said that, okay, when you get a haircut, I'm gonna get the same haircut you have. So yeah, Jerry. Coming out of the Velvet Barber Shop, okay? With at the time we had our really short haircuts, so like this, with what do you call it, line and stuff around here. Jerry did that. After, I tell this story, I'm gonna pass the mic on. After he took me to get my haircut, we went on this motorcycle. Never in my life have I ever rode a motorcycle, okay, in North Carolina. Bicycle, yes. He took me out a place called the Duran Dirties. My mother would kill me if you did. And she knew that. She was a strict Southern person, okay? And, but anyway, we had that type of friendship, okay? It wasn't just about, you know, blacks and whites and all that kind of stuff. We loved each other and respected one another. And for that, Michigan State, I am forever grateful to have friends like this. My kids call him Uncle Don, Uncle Jen, Clyde, back in the day. Uncle Gene, Uncle Jerry, okay? That's what kind of relationship we've had over these many years. So I'll shut up now and I'll pass it on to my brother Jerry.
Can you hear me? Okay. I came from a small rural town, Duran, which is probably about 40 miles from here. So when I came here, I had a little cultural shock myself. I mean, I was a farm boy. We probably had maybe 80 or 90 kids in my high school class, and played Class B football. And back then, in those days, we played schools like Claire, Ithaca, real small schools. So it was quite a shock when I came down here and got to play against some of these great athletes. And I'm telling you, they are great. It was really interesting. And with that, I was recruited to play football. Also got recruited to wrestle, and that lasted about 3 days. realized I wasn't cut out for that sport here. And I think, and Don talked about the Penn State game our junior year, and how we all kind of came together, and it all meshed, and everybody cared for each other. And we had a great coaching staff back then. Henry, Gordy Cedar, Vince Carolot, I just go down the line. I think, in fact, I just counted a picture out here. I don't know how many coaches they have now. There were 8, and that's counting the freshman coach. So we had 7 guys as our coaches. And even with the coaching staff, it was really tightly knit. And I think another thing that why our team developed like it was is when we were freshmen, and that's not just the football players, but almost all the freshmen were in Wonders Hall. And we just kind of came together there in Wonders Hall. And of course, I came here. It's a long story. I was going to go to U of M. But a friend of mine, I have a really good running back at Lockport High School, and he couldn't get into U of M, so he went to Wyoming. And my future wife came to Michigan State, so I had the opportunity to come here. And sure glad. Well, my sophomore year wasn't so glad because they went to the Rose Bowl. It was my junior year when we went to the Rose Bowl. I was really glad I made that decision. But it was an honor to play with these guys. It really was. And like you mentioned, we probably lost 20 guys from our team, but we're all still very close, keep in touch, and we're having a victory reunion here on that's going to be a real blast. So anyway, that's my story. I came from a real small school and loved to play football and got to play with some of the best guys in the world right here.
For those of you,
I'd like to share this story about Jerry. I played right end and mostly tight end. Jerry was a right tackle. And 80% of the plays we called, Jerry and I had to block the tackle on the opposite side. And so about every 8th play of the game or something, I would just run straight down the field, no fakes, whatever, and they throw me a pass. Because we were such a running team with Clinton and White Lee and Jimmy Ray and all those guys, but we had this off tackle play. So we were playing Ohio State, and so I just learned, Clinton from Cathedral Latin in Ohio State. This is a big game for Clinton, right? So the whole week there was a special play that Duffy, he ran that play at least 2 times before at the end of practice, and Jerry remember this. It was that weak side sweep. Clint would get the ball, and we were hoping that the defense would slant to the wide side of the field. So we practiced it at least 2 times before we would go in for the day. And so finally, we're in the game playing with Ohio State. It's early in the game, so here's our play. So me and Jerry get ready. So we fired up to block the guy, to take him out. So they had the small side of the field, this slant, where everybody on defense is slanting to the weak side of the field, see? And so they did that, and they just blew us out of the way. So Clint was trying to run that side of the field. He just turned around and went for 80 yards. the other direction. So he scores a touchdown, and so we're all celebrating, and we come back, and Duffy is celebrating, and he's all excited, and he says, I told you that that play would work. I never forget that. I mean, every day we had to run that play. He would stop, he would call it, he would stop.
there you go. Showed you what I got.
I just showed him where it was.
Oh, this reunion is going to be something when you guys get together. I'll tell you. One of the great things about this era, and I think it's something that all you guys touch on from time to time, whether you're from Detroit or Durand, or you're from South Carolina or Texas or Cleveland or Hawaii, wherever the case may be, it was a tapestry. And once again, the whole was greater than the sum of the parts. As great as they were individually, they were better as a team, and they still are. I think we ought to take some questions out here. We look like we got some people who are really enjoying this. We have a mic out there that we can pass around. Can we do that? Can we get a microphone out there? And we have a couple out here that we can pass along for the players. But let's go out here for some questions. Yes, in the orange.
I just want to thank you guys for all you did then and all you continue to do. I have a brother that played for the University of Michigan, and I hear about it often. And I thought Bo was God. And I've got some friends from Ohio State that I don't talk too much in the fall. I've got a couple Notre Dame friends I never talk to. But when they all get huffy about what they've got, I tell them, Michigan State Spartans broke the racial barrier, and you will never top that. So I'll always be a Spartan. Thank you.
Good evening. First of all, I'd like to thank you, Jack Ebling, for introducing me to Ernie, and Ernie for you introducing me to Maya last year on my journey. My name is Brian Chapman, and I attend Michigan State on the program called the DVAP, the Disabled Veterans Assistance Program. So I come back to college in '09, and in doing so, I've been working on the 100-year anniversary of the first black athlete, Gideon Smith, from 1913 to 2013. And in doing that, I've come to appreciate you guys' history and the the things you did for college integration and the present generation, and I just want to say congratulations.
Over here. While we're moving the mic around, I just have one statistic I want to share with you for anyone else who thought that Bo Schembechler was God. Among all Big Ten teams, this is since 1950 when Michigan State began competing in Big Ten sports, didn't actually play football in the Big Ten until 1953. This has to do with national championships. Ohio State has 4.5, 3 outright and 3 shared. Nebraska and Penn State were not in the league. Michigan State, 2, 1 outright, 2 shared, 65-66. Minnesota has 1 outright championship. The University of Michigan has 0.5, 1/2 of 1 championship in 1997. So when next time you see your brother, you can just remind him of that. Yes, sir.
I talked with a guy named Steve Moordyke. I'm with the Varsity S Club, and I talked to him at the halftime of one of the football games about 3-4 years ago. And he said the only thing that concerns him about football now is he said it's so serious, it's so hard, it's so important to win. And he said he was a 3rd string quarterback, but Duffy was the coach. And he said, you know what? He made it fun. Any of you guys want to comment about that?
Anyone want to address that? About it being fun? It's like when you're winning that much, it's fun, right? Nobody's agreeing with that, right? No, they were named jackasses too early, too often.
I was going to say that on the defensive side, all we knew was tough love. In fact, it was child abuse. I got to explain this. So we held Ohio State to minus yards, right, Coach?
Yeah.
So Hank says, I don't want you to get the big head. I don't want you to yourself out of the game. What does that mean, Coach? Well, Tuesday night, he made us run 158 times across the playing field where we practiced because we didn't want to have the big head. So we beat Michigan pretty handily. As a matter of fact, in the first quarter, Bubba knocked the running back out and George Webster knocked the kid out of his shoes. We were always more afraid of Henry than we were of the opponent. So 25 years later, we have a reunion. Hank gets up, does the traditional whistle. We all stop, and he starts off by saying, now, I know you guys want to kill me. We said, no, Coach, you're wrong. We still do.
You know, Clint, when the defensive guys in '66 held Michigan to minus 51 yards rushing, Ohio State to minus 22, and then 4th-ranked Notre Dame to minus 12. Now, that had to be a little bit of fun, right? A little bit of fun. The game was fun.
If you got 4 hours, it's over.
Winning is fun. When you're winning, it's always fun, you know. But the real victory is inside, overcoming your own limitations, your own doubt, and you can't do it by yourself, you know. Support that we gave each other, we always encouraging each other, and I don't know how we did it, but we did it, because I tell you, every other week, somebody wanted to go home or quit. Yeah, they wanted to go home, and we stuck together. And I have to say, football for me was only fun when we won. I was only concerned about not how many yards I scored, but winning. And I never wanted to disappoint my brothers. And that's so that was the fun. The most fun was celebrating afterwards. And you know what? We didn't need to show off. We did our job, and we let our actions speak volumes for what we're about.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Gene, a lot of people here were athletes, but there are some of us who were like gym rats. And we loved to go over to that basement gym over there and play basketball. Ernie used to come over there, he'd bring his bag in. I remember well.
Yeah.
And lived in Wonders with you guys, and you were, hi, how you doing? You're always friendly. I was like Jerry, I come from a little town called Morenci. Okay, and we played small Class D, Class C schools. And when I got here, it was like, oh, you know, here's George Webster walking down the hall. He kind of had that look to him like he was mean, you know. But we found out he wasn't really mean. So anyway, after you, Gene, went to the pros, you'd come back and do the placement bureau thing for a few years. And I had gotten married in this April, and my wife said, you got to look for a job, teaching job. So I went over there, and Gene either pretended he recognized me or whatever, and I just come from the gym, and I had a little beard, my hair is kind of getting long, and hadn't shaved for a while. I got to get an interview, Gene. And he said, there's a guy right down here from Troy right now. And I said, well, I can't go down there. He said, come on. He took me down there, introduced me to this guy from Troy Schools. He pulled out the contract, I signed it, worked there for 30 years. My wife worked there for 30 years. And I really owe you my life.
Hey, it's ironic. I'm glad you told that story. It's ironic that you said that because Gene is the one that really, you know, gave me an opportunity in my professional life. It was 1972, and Lansing Boys Training School had just closed, and I was a head football coach over there, and I just finished my master's. And it was the middle of the summer, and I was walking around looking really sad and pitiful. Gene said, "What's wrong, man?" I said, "Man, I don't have a job, Gene. You know, I'm just feeling bad." He said, "Ernie, we have a minority job fair." And that was the first one, and Gene was in charge of that. Gene said, "Ernie, you got to go home, put on a suit, man, and get back over here about 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. It was like 3:30 in the afternoon, okay? And I went home, took a shower, got dressed. I interviewed for 3 jobs. One was Grand Rapids Public Schools for an assistant principal job. I was 23, 24 years old. The head job at Front Central was open, and a football job over there. And then there was another job near Detroit. It was because of Gene and Duffy too. Duffy wrote me a letter of recommendation called Sylvia and said, we're gonna write a letter of recommendation. He sent a letter of recommendation to the superintendent in Grand Rapids, Dr. Phil Ronco. I don't know if anybody remember Dr. Phil Ronco. Phil was the superintendent. He had been there for like a year. He was a Michigan State grad. He called me the next day into his office, and we talked football for 45 minutes. I left, he was asking about you guys, and about our team and how, you know, how we were. He offered me the job. He said, "Ernie, you can start anytime you want. When do you want to start?" And from there, I was in administration for 35, 40 years as a principal. So, thank you, Gene. I love you, brother.
Yeah. My name is Bill Warewain. I was a freshman. When I first came to Michigan State, I was 17 years old with the high academic credentials of being able to run fast and turn left. My first weekend on campus, I walked into the St. John's Church, the Catholic Church, and I was stunned to see the 2 altar boys at Mass were Gene and Clinton Jones. And they were serving the Mass with this real smile on their face, which it wasn't just a ceremony to them. It was like they had the essence of what a church meant. It kind of reminded me of Donald Trump. Several weeks later, I attended with Rich Tompkins, the Young Christian Athletes Association. They brought me over there, and Gene and Father Frohmeyer were there. I don't remember if Clint was there for sure, but he was telling me a story, and then he ended up telling the whole group of a story, that Gene had given him a ticket to the Notre Dame game, and on the 50-yard line. Well, Father Frohmeyer was a Notre Dame student at one time, and he was struggling to decide who he was going to root for in that game. And he said it was going on, and it was really getting tough on him. And after the kickoff was over and the Spartans' offense took the field for the first time, he said when he saw Gene Washington jogging out onto the field for that first play, he said tears started streaming down his eyes. And he stood up and yelled at the top of his lungs, "Go State!" And he said he was a Spartan fan ever since.
We have another question or two.
I'm Bob Steele, and I came in '63 as a hurdler to Michigan State. And every night, Gene and Clint and I would be in the field house, indoor field house. And one of the things I remember more than anything is the two of them were talking. We were freshmen, and they didn't want to go to spring practice. And I kind of wandered over. I said, "What do you need? I want to go to practice." And Gene at the time had kind of a bit of a southern drawl at the time. And he said, "Well, there's this guy Webster, I just don't want to get hit by him." and he had kind of a southern drawl. He says, "You know what, a gunny sack full of bones, you get whipped by a gunny sack full of bones, that's what it feels like." he said, and I went back to the door, and I knew who Webster was, but I just said, this guy's got to be bad. If those two guys don't want to go to practice, I said, and the first game we go, and I can't remember who they're playing, but a running back came around the corner, and we knew he was a rover back. He didn't really have a position. He could set up wherever he wanted. But he hit him in the sternum and flipped the guy on his back, just shoulder blade flipped in the ground. And I said, holy. And these guys were incredible, but all of us said Webster is the real deal. Of all, I mean, they were freak good, but George Webster was beyond belief.
I'd like to add a few points to that, because all of us here knew everything about Webster Mickey. And I know Ernie remembers, so early on as freshmen, your whole idea is to make sure you impress the coaches, so as freshman football players. And as a part of that, there's always that one-on-one drill. And you don't know, there's a line to the right and a line to the left. So all of a sudden you're in this line, but when it's your time, you look up, there's a guy in front of you. And there's a line down there, and you have to get to the other side, and he has to get to the other side. And so when I showed up at the line, Mickey was looking at me. and after going against Mickey, I was quite certain that I was going to run track. and I said the same thing about Alan Page, for example. We played Notre Dame, and Alan Page, at the time, was our teammates with the Vikings. But when we played Alan Page in that 10-10 tie, and in the 3 years that we played Notre Dame, he was always the right end and on defense. And so I was always the right end on offense. And to this day, after watching Alan play in the National Football League, I'm awful glad that I was on the right side and he was on the left side. And so those are memories that stay with you for life.
Do we have one other question? Anybody have a last shot? Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something real quick here. I came in '63 also. In fact, I was very fortunate enough to run in a sprint relay. We were all Americans with Gene and Clint and a guy by the name of Jim Summers. And I just want to make sure that Gene you need to give some credit where credit is due. You haven't yet introduced your beautiful wife. And I met her in 1965 when we were at the, and I don't remember if Claudette even remembers this, but in 65, we went to San Francisco for the national championships, and I believe you were going to school out there at the time, if I remember right, and you put on a little party for us. We all went over there. But I just want to make sure that everyone knows that he does have a better half, and she's sitting right over there, Claudette. One other thing, Clint, is, and he never got beat in high school, by the way, in the high or low hurdles his senior year. But you remember the closest you probably ever came to getting beat was the Mansfield Relays.
The Mansfield Relays.
In the low hurdles, where Clint and I hit the finish line right together, but they gave it to him. And I thought that the only reason that happened, because he was two-time state champ from Ohio. The meet was in Ohio, by the way, Mansfield Relay, and I was from Michigan. So I figured that's why they gave it to him. All crack at that.
Well, I know we're at the end, and Dad's brought out a very interesting point. You know, probably the two most important women in my life is my mother and also my wife. My mother brought me here, you know, without her I wouldn't be here right now. And my wonderful wife, you know, for a person that couldn't have children, you know, and now I have like 5 wonderful daughters, 5 granddaughters and a grandson. And my wife is Rosalie, and, you know, and people always say, you know, make sure keep your nose and stay out of trouble, because I'm always in trouble with all these women. And of course, you know, recognizing our most important people.
The reason I came to Michigan State sitting right there. And my wife, Pat. Okay, I cannot leave this room without introducing my wife. Okay, 48 years, folks. This is 48 years. Mickey, stand up, baby. Love you, girl. Let's talk about the other important woman in my life is my mother. She always told us that education was a key to the future. At that time, I didn't know what the hell that meant. But now, after going to college, we know what education means and what education meant for us as far as the future is concerned. So, love you, Mick. Love you, Mick. Mom.
And yes, Becky is my wife. Raise your hand, honey. Raise your hand. She's back there. I'm from Detroit,
Coleman,
but
I want to salute Sherm Lewis over there. One of the best ones out there. It's great that all 4 of you guys are in the hall, but it'll really be complete when number 20 gets in over there. One more quick story for you, because it's going to be tough to get tickets Saturday night. These guys are okay, but I tell you what, people are going to be paying a lot of money for tickets. And I have a great story about the 1966 Notre Dame game. Remember a guy named Bill Beardsley? It was a ticket manager at Michigan State for decades. And he said he could have sold 150,000 tickets to that football game. And he was getting calls, and he was getting letters from all over the country. And finally he got a call 3 days before the game. And the guy said, Mr. Beardsley, I have a question for you. Is President Johnson coming to the football game? And Bill Beardsley said, no, we just got the word from the White House this morning that he is not going to be there. And the guy said, well, if he were coming, would you be able to find a seat for him? Well, of course, he's the President of the United States. We would be able to get him in the Secret Service. He said, I'll take his seat. Bill Beardsley told me, he said, that was the smartest trick to try to get tickets, and the guy sat on the 47-yard line. That football game. How about that? Maya, can you come up here for 1 second, please? When a woman teases you, you can't let it go at that, right? So when you talk about Through the Banks of the Red Cedar, we had a great chance to look at the trailer. We saw some of the other footage. You talked about the archives and all the great work the people here are doing for you. Is there a destination date? Is there something planned where people can expect to see this? And once again, give us the address if people want to help out.
Sure. We're hoping 2016, because the good news is they got back-to-back national titles. So we got 50 years this fall, we got 50 years to celebrate next year, as well as the 67 draft is a lot to celebrate. So we're going to be celebrating this 50-year milestone over the next 3 years, but our goal, as long as everything kind of moves as we'd like it, we will hope to be finished in early 2016. So that by football season next fall, it's out in the world and we can have some events. And there's been conversations with the Alumni Association of how we can have a big event here in East Lansing when it's all finished, and a big event in Minneapolis, since those are kind of our local destinations. If you are interested, the lovely Tracy Pasteur, as well as myself, will be out there to help with donations if you have any questions at the donation table. But it has been a long night, and you may need to rest because it's a big Oregon weekend happening. We have flyers here, so if maybe you'd like to think about making a donation and it's not something that you're able to do tonight or next week or in a few months, you can just take one of these and has all the information on it of how you can donate. So look for us online through the banksoftheredcedar.com as well as our Facebook page.
Thank you all for coming, and go Green.